Today we're going to be looking at a scenario where Japan forms an empire again. So here's Japan under the red, and yeah, they're going to be forming an empire. First target, Taiwan. So Japan's going to be like, ooh, okay. Sends its navy down the Ryukyu Islands, starts to surround the island. Taiwan's like, help. Land in this, oh, no. Land in the south of the country and the east, as well as a attempted landing on the west, but that failed and they lose quite a few troops. Japanese forces push into Taiwan, but they reach the mountains. And I'm not going to ignore geography, but yeah, they continue to push around. They eventually make cross the mountains in the Battle of Taipei. Last a couple months, and Taiwan is officially gone. Goodbye, Taiwan. For now. Alexa, okay. Alright then. Now, let's have a look at their naval waters. This is, what the heck? Why does it look like that? Well, doesn't matter. But yeah, so basically imagine Japan controls all of this land around this area. So now Japan is going to go for another country, and that is going to be, wait, actually, two countries. They're going to declare war on the Philippines. Sorry for this kind of delay. Here you go, the Philippines is now joined, been attacked, and they declare war on Vietnam. Sorry, all Vietnamese and Filipinos out here. But yeah, Japan sees this as a golden opportunity, and they declare war on them. So now we have a massive war spreading over the oceans, and America's starting to get a bit like, Japan, what are you doing? So the Navy sends over here and goes straight from Taiwan to the northern Philippines, navally bombarding the north of the country. They also have a rank coming from near Tokyo to reach the south parts of the Philippines. Also, the rest of the army from the Philippines and West Japan pushes along the Chinese coast and the Vietnamese coast. And because Vietnam is mostly coastal, they are able to do a lot of damage bombarding. So this is the Japanese Navy right now. So we'll have a look at that a lot this episode. Cool. So now, Japanese forces land in the north of the Philippines, and they capture a few major cities. I think there's one over here, and they capture that. Then they start to push down and get closer and closer to Manila. And then the Philippines is like, wait, how about we just move the capital? And they're like, okay. And they move it to Cebu, which is down here. And then also, Vietnam is like, Hanoi is okay for now. We will move it later, though, if it gets in trouble. So, they've noticed that Japan notices this and sends their forces down and starts to do some island hopping. And they get close to the new Filipino capital, as well as threatening and capturing Manila. Meanwhile, Japanese forces continue to push down the eastern coast of the Philippine Islands, pushing along, capturing the South Island, and capture the Cebu, and the Philippines surrenders. Now Vietnam. They land over here, but Vietnam has been preparing and creates loads of guerrilla warfare locations across the country. And Japan knows a secret strategy, so they send those troops all the way into this middle part, do loads of naval bombardments, and make hundreds of naval landings, almost like it's a reverse D-Day, except they're not trying to liberate, they're trying to invade. Here we go. Tons of naval amphibious landings are made by Japan, and they all stretch along the coast, and they connect together eventually and split Vietnam in half, and this is not good for Vietnam. The South is now on its own, and some bad things happen. the south gets completely destroyed, and the rest of the Vietnamese forces flee into Cambodia and Laos and kind of do a reverse Vietnam here. And they send their troops back up through Laos into Vietnam again, which helps defend the Japanese for a bit longer. However, they can just start snaking up the coast, push up here, and then make a naval landing just outside Hanoi. And a huge battle starts with much of the Vietnamese population being mobilized. Push over here, and then Hanoi falls, and Vietnam is gone. So let's have a look at yet another peace treaty here. Unsurprisingly, we see the complete and full annexation of of Vietnam and the Philippines. Now Japan's empire is looking kind of cool. Next on the list, they have the Koreas, Malaysia, Laos, Cambodia, and Brunei. Can't forget Brunei, right? And Singapore as well. Now Japan's doing a lot here. They also declare war on a couple of Pacific islands, but we're going to just say that they just annexed them. And now the war begins. Arguably, if you're ignoring Korea, they have a much easier task to go up against and countries to invade, because they're really not going to have the same. No offense to Cambodia and Laos, but they're really not going to put up as much of a fight as Vietnam and the Philippines. Same with Malaysia as well. So yeah, Japan is not stupid, so they put most of their troops in the thin part of the country to avoid being cut in half, and then they cut Laos in half and they separate them from Cambodia. Now, Laos doesn't have much population, and considering they just took over 100 million plus countries, they probably have a population of just under 300,000, 300 million at this point, which is a lot more army. Oh yeah, Jeju. They capture that island, and they land in South Korea. For the first time since ancient times, the Koreas decide to move on from their differences and unite, because otherwise they're not going to really get out of this alive. And now the Korean country has nukes, and Japan's a bit like, oh. So Japan focused most of its troops and captures Laos capital. Also, they do the same thing with Cambodia, capturing Phnom Penh and capturing most of the country. Now, Japanese naval troops leave from Vietnam and head straight towards northern Malaysia, and also the naval troops in the Philippines just jump a couple islands and land in Borneo. And here we are. So massive naval landings occur in the north of this island of Malaysia and Borneo. And does it really have a chance against the Japanese military? Not really. They land in northern Malaysia, and Malaysia just gets wiped out, as well as Singapore. Now, for Korea, there's going to be a little bit much more of a challenge here. Seoul is going to be the capital, because it's much more developed than Pyongyang, as we all know. Now, Japanese troops start to push along into Korea, and secretly, they start a little nuclear weapons program. We're going to say right here. In this region, they send all their nuclear resources over here, and they start to prepare missile silos, etc. Also, on some of these islands over here, and also on Jeju, they install loads of missile launchers, and they start bombing the heck out of Korea. And they start landing. Make an amphibious landing in North Korea over here near Chongjin. One over on the right, one next to Pyongyang, and one on this little peninsula next to Seoul. Now Korea's starting to fall apart here. Oh, also, meanwhile, Japan annexes their countries down here because they just want to get this out of the way. Start the assimilating process, and welcome to the Japanese Empire. Here we go. Now all been united. Speed this up if you want. Here we are. That's all done now. We could see Japan's annexed a lot more of the south. And now China's like, okay, Japan, no. They don't directly join the war, but they start... No, actually, that's the wrong color. They don't directly join the war, but they start sending supplies and a few armed volunteers who would like to help and join the war. against the Japanese. This is very successful for the Korean front as it helps the Koreans start to push back, help the Koreans push back in some areas over here near Pyongyang and the one over here. However, they're not so lucky with defending against the ones in North Korea, mostly as they unite to form one big massive front. They push up here and they capture the north of the country. And they start to push towards Pyongyang, which will knock the North Korean front out of the war. But just before this happens, the North Korean, because it's like kind of a union thing, the North Korean and the South Korean presidents meet in Seoul quickly to discuss what to do. And North Korea, of course, wants to send nukes, but South Korea is initially reluctant, but they're like, we don't really have much choice. So they launch a nuke. But Japan sees this. And just before they launch the nuke, as it's about to launch, Japan bombs the nuclear site and it destroys many of North Korea's nukes, creating a huge radiation cloud and effectively causing this area to become uninhabitable for a period. The world is like, whoa. And meanwhile, South Korea is just like, what just happened? And North Korea just disappears from the planet. And Japan's like, don't mind me, but I'm going to take this part back. China's like, okay. We're going to move on from that. And now, welcome to Japan. Japan has officially expanded its empire back into Korea. I think are looking quite cool, actually, if I say so myself. Japan sees also that there's not much longer on the video, so they want to speed up their military a bit, which takes a couple years, but we're obviously not going to do that. And it's 2030 now. After 5 years of fighting, they wait a couple years, and it's 2032. And just in time with the World Cup, they declare war on their next target. Thailand, Myanmar, Indonesia, big ones, Papua New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands. The world is like, whoa, okay, Japan, you kind of need to slow down here. Japan's like, no, I want more land. Wrong color. That's annoying. Well, we're going to move on from that. Here we go. That's better. So now, Japan declares war on these countries, and then Australia's like, no, I've had enough. And they snap. And they also join the war against Japan. And Russia's like, yeah. Russia joins the war as well. And now Japan's a bit cooked. At least that's what everybody thinks. But Japan does not give up and starts its really difficult march. Meanwhile, other countries start to join China's new coalition, including Mongolia, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan. Considering Bhutan does not recognize China, this is big for them. So now all of the rest of East Asia has joined the alliance, and this is what we're going with. Also, other Pacific countries, including Ecuador, which is very random, but they joined because they have a Pacific island, and the United States joins and allies with China for probably the first time in history, maybe. Or wait, maybe did they do that they allied with them in World War II because Japan was doing the same thing, actually. So, America is friends with Russia and China for the first time since, for Russia, World War I and, World War II. Yeah, World War II for both of them. Wow. Big steps, everybody. Coloring this part of Alaska, because it's always annoying. You know what, let's just put Canada in this thing, because now, Canada's in this alliance, and Japan's a bit scared. Some of the population is scared, some of the leaders are scared, and Japan is like, do not worry, it will be perfectly fine. Also, if you're wondering, this area got cleaned up we're going to just assume that we can do that now. And Japan has officially built its own first nuke, as well as the leftovers from Korea. So now Japan has 66 nukes. Unlucky, because also Japan is kind of not doing very good here. Not doing very good things. I'm going to just say that. For now, the coalition, the anti-Japan coalition, does not join the war, as it's just waiting to see what Japan does. So now, Japanese troops start to absolutely race across southern Thailand, reaching Bangkok in a matter of weeks. They start to enter in from Indochina, and they start to do some really quick invasions on Thailand, and Myanmar are like, what the hell? And then Thailand just disappears. Myanmar has even less of a chance in Thailand, so they're going to just flee to their cousins in Tibet. Hi. Also, Japanese Navy starts absolutely bombing the heck out of Indonesia, and Indonesia is just like, oh, so one too many islands to defend. That's a lot of islands. Japanese troops start landings everywhere in all of the major islands over here. And Sulawesi, they enter in land-wise from Borneo, land in Sumatra. Java is a little bit later. They land in Papua, and unfortunately, Bougainville has been passed to yet another sovereign state that isn't their own. Sorry, Bougainville. One day, they now get invaded. Papua New Guinea starts getting destroyed, and Japan's going full. Oh wow. Japan also crosses, because I think they border Russia from over here. Then they cross into this narrow strip of land. However, Russia has defended this only part of this eastern Russia that actually really has much people. I mean, this whole part has population, but that's it. This is just ice, trees. So yeah, Japan lands in Sakhalin, starts to push up into Kamchatka. And here, I think, is a good time to end part 1. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next part. Bye.